Hey everyone, welcome back. It's me, Nicole, and today we are doing our Stay Home and Bake With Me Scones edition. We're going to be making carrot cake scones today. They are absolutely delicious. You're going to be getting the best of both worlds with the delicious bite of carrot cake, but with the quick, easy dough like a scone bread. So we're going to get started and bake and bake.
I'm taking matters into my own hands now. Let's face it, we only got this life to live out. So follow me, I'm ready to go. I'll take the lead, I'm ready to go. Ready to go.
All right, so a little bit about scones before we get started. We are going to be doing a sanding method in this video. And what that means is that we are taking all of the dry ingredients and then plopping in really cold cubed up butter and just going to be sanding it. We have actually a pastry cutter first, then we use our hands to get a better feel for how each little nugget of butter is doing. We want all of this flour and dries to just encapsulate all of the pieces of butter, and then those butter pieces in the oven are going to melt and just evaporate their water content and just create these beautiful, delicious, tender bites of buttery scone. So that is the goal for this recipe. If you have a food processor, it makes the process so fast. Because we have nothing but time while we're staying home, we are going to get our hands dirty. And the kids really, I feel like this is a great way to teach them and a great time to have them just get all in and learn how it feels to make the scone and the whole purpose of why we're doing the sanding method. So I used this as a time to just teach, and hopefully you guys can also do this with your kiddos if you have them. If not, to get your own hands dirty. It's so fun just to feel it all through your fingers. If not, the food processor, so fast, and it makes this recipe a zip. A zip, a zip, a zip, zippity-doo. So let's get started on the recipe. We are starting with all of our dries in a bowl. So we're going to start with our all-purpose flour. It's going to be 420 grams of all-purpose flour. And then we'll be pouring in our sugar. There's going to be 145 grams of sugar to add into there. Then we will add our baking powder, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. After adding the cinnamon into the bowl, I'm just going to zest up some orange. I actually didn't have orange on hand, so we zested a couple cuties, because they don't zest very well. The rinds are a little different, but we zested up some cuties for some extra flavor in our dry ingredients. We're gonna whisk all that together to become homogeneous, and then we're going to add in our fat. We're using 113 grams of cold butter straight from the fridge. I like to cube mine up, cut it really small, and then pop it back in the fridge while I get my other ingredients ready to make sure it's coming straight out of the fridge. So once you get your butter out of the fridge, you plop it in, put all the butter into your dries, and you can either use a pastry cutter. This is where you could just pulse it in a food processor until it's nice and crumbled, or you can use a fork or your hands. In this house, we're gonna start with the pastry cutter because I wanted my kids to feel that feeling of just pushing the pastry cutter down and twisting and making sure all those butter pieces are getting enveloped. Is that a word? Enveloped in the flour. I think that's a word, guys, so I'm going with it. Once all that is incorporated, you're gonna make a well in the middle of your bowl. Kind of push your dry ingredients out to leave room for your egg and your buttermilk. We're gonna use 1 egg in this recipe and 230 grams of buttermilk. We actually did not have buttermilk in our house, so before we started, we squeezed a lemon into our milk that was actually almost bad, so we needed to use it up. So we squeezed a lemon into our milk that was nearing expiration, and then let that sit. You stir it up, let it sit for about 10 minutes, and that is gonna make your own buttermilk at home. So no need to go grab buttermilk at the store, especially now. We're just trying to use up what we have in our house already. We also had carrots that we weren't eating, all these little baby carrots. So usually for this recipe, I would use big carrots, long carrots that aren't processed in small and baby carrots. But we had these baby carrots, so why not? We grated those up. And we are gonna use and make our scone recipe even more delicious by doing a carrot cake version. So we're just trying to use up what we have. So if you guys don't have an ingredient, just switch it up. If you don't have cinnamon, add something else that you think goes well with carrot and orange. This recipe is not like a macaron recipe where you have to stay by the book. Switch things up, add a little wheat flour if you don't have a ton of regular flour left. It's really versatile. Don't be afraid to go off on your own. After you put in the buttermilk and the egg, we're going to add the vanilla extract. My daughter spilled a little extra vanilla in there, which is never bad. It's just gonna taste even better. So we've got our wets and with our dries, and we're just gonna mix that up. I chose a spatula at first and then got my hands dirty, and we all got our hands a little dirty trying to mix this together. You don't wanna overwork this dough, so just work it till it gets nice and shaggy. And then we're gonna add our carrots in. You have 100 grams of carrots. And then we're going to just fold it all together. You just want to fold everything together and then turn it out on a floured surface or floured countertop, whatever works for you. Push it down and then let it rest for about 5 minutes. Once you have your dough laid out on a floured surface for 5 minutes to rest, go ahead and cut up your scones how you want. Shape them however you'd like. We used a cookie cutter for ours. This was a scalloped edge cookie cutter, but it won't keep the scalloped look, so that didn't matter. If you just have a cup you want to use, you can cut with a cup. If it has a sharp enough edge, or you can cut into the traditional triangle shape of a scone. Do whatever you'd like. These are for you and your family to enjoy. We used a cookie cutter that was about 2 inches in diameter. We floured the cutter, and then we plopped it straight down into our dough, took it straight out, and then we're gonna remove that circle and put it onto a baking sheet lined with parchment. Do that however many times you'll have for your recipe. We got 14 scones out of ours with our 2-inch cutter. And then you're gonna bake these at a preheated 400-degree oven for about 15 minutes. Depending on the size that you have yours, ours was 15 minutes. Yours might be 20 if you do larger. But you want to make sure they're just lightly golden. And that's when you know you can take them out, immediately transfer to a cooling rack to cool. Once these scones are cooling out of the oven, we can make the delicious frosting. So the frosting is what really kicks these scones up a notch and makes them taste exactly like carrot cake. They're my favorite. We're gonna take 4 ounces or 113 grams of softened cream cheese. Mix it up a little bit with your hand mixer. Plop in tablespoon of orange juice. We only had Cuties. If you're using Cuties for some reason, you also have those at home, do 2 tablespoons. 1 tablespoon wasn't as fragrant as I would have loved. So 1 to 2 tablespoons of orange juice. Whip it up a little bit. Add 180 grams of Confectioners Sugar. Make it come together till smooth. Add a teaspoon of vanilla. And once that's all nice and whipped up and smooth, you're ready to, once your scones are completely cooled, spread it all over. Smother your scone with this delicious cream cheese frosting. You guys will thank me. Put a ton on. Honestly, it's so good. And then enjoy. Scones are best enjoyed right after making them once they're cooled. So you can either half the recipe if you don't think you're going to eat 12 the same day that you make them, or you can keep some frosting off, store the frosting in the fridge for a week, and then put some of the scones in the freezer, and they freeze really well. And that does it for our scone recipe. We thoroughly enjoyed making these with you guys and feeding our tummies. I hope you guys make these at home. Make sure to tag Bake Toujours if you do, so we can see your beautiful creations. You can also subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It helps us immensely. And ring the bell so you get notifications when we put new videos out. Hope you guys are staying safe and staying sane. And of course, we love you. Peace out.
Yeah, you.